In this lesson, you will learn how to work with the application models of UFT Developer. In our last script, we have created a test using the script generation of the Object Identification Center and identified the test objects by their properties in the script itself. Like here you can see I have a menu which I'm identifying by its ID and the value of the ID. I have another username field which I identify by the three properties like tag name, name and type. Password is identified in the same manner. Yeah, you have the tag name, you have the name and you have the type, and you have the sign in button which is identified also with the three properties tag name, name and button type in this case. And later on we use those variables to interact with the application under test. This approach is great if you want to get started quickly. Then it makes sense to really explore the interaction between UFT Developer and the application under test. Or if you want to build a framework where you say, okay, I have dynamic values which I will be passing by through an input file or any kind of variables, then you could probably use this kind of approach. But on long term, having a bunch of test cases, a high number of test cases, this may not scale because you are writing the identification properties, how those objects will be identified by UFT Developer directly in your script. For Selenium, we know you have to build the page object models in order to allow the scale of your test execution and also test maintenance, especially if you want to reuse a couple of objects, then page objects model is a good approach to go. With UFT Developer, we have even a better approach by providing you an interface without much definition of any kind of classes. You can build your application models directly in UFT Developer using the Object Identification Center. And this is exactly what we are going to do. We will build the same test script which we built using the generation code, now with using application models. So let's go into our application under test to understand what we are going to build. So this is our application under test. What we will do is we will build exactly the same script what we have done with the script generation. We will click on the menu item, enter any kind of email and password in order to log in, and then we will sign in. And once we are signed in, we will close the browser. So that would be the approach we will take. Coming back to UFT Developer, the first thing we need to do is we need to create a new file for the application models of UFT Developer. And you will find it also in the creation list. So if you go to the package where you want to create the application models, go to new, and under selection you will find UFT Developer application model items. Select it, give it a name. So we will say this is our AOS, which is Advanced Online Shopping App models. So this is here we will now build the different model of our application in order to interact with the test objects. Press OK. And now you can see a visual UI will open, which will allow you now to build those objects and scan your application and create your application model. So you have two different possibilities. So the first one is to really define, if you don't have the application available, you can define a new object as a test object where you start now giving it a name. Let's say this will be my web page. My code will be also web page. Now I can define the technology. Yeah, so let's say it will be a web technology and what kind of type it will be. Yeah, so I can now define here exactly what type my object would be. And here you can see then it's a page. I say this is fine. And if I want, I can also, let's say, define the title. Let's say this would be Advantage Online Shopping. And with this approach, I can now save this file. If I want, I can also make here a tag in order I want to find it later on. Like, let's say this is a custom object which I have created. It was not being scanned by UFT Developer. The moment I click on save, you can see here it is already in. So the application I would like to test does not exist, and before the application is even developed, I can use the custom objects to really build my application model hierarchy and use it already in my automation script. And once your application is available, you can then really continue and execute your automation tests which are built on your custom objects. So this is one option you can choose, which will be not the focus for this demo. We will be looking into the second option, which is identifying the objects using the Object Identification Center. So this is something I will launch now. So I have started the Object Identification Center. So it's up and running. You can see here it has started, and now it will be the same approach what I've taken when I generated the script. So I will click on the identification button and say I would like to have this object scanned. So I will scan it. You see it got it. And now I click on the object itself, go here and say I would like to continue to scan, and select then the username, the password, and the sign in button. Say OK, and that is it probably. So what I can do, I can close it here. So I see here all the different objects which has been scanned. I could validate it now. So I could go in and say, okay, I see here this is the web link user menu, and it is identified by my account. I sign out or sign out, or I could say, okay, I want to have a CSS selector, for instance, which I would use to identify it. I select a CSS selector and say identify, so it's identifying it, or I can also go with XPath. And so you see already you don't have to drill down into the developer tools and juggle their properties of the DOM objects. It is already classified for you, and also the CSS selector is quite easy configurable. So this is fine. The next item I will also quickly highlight and check. So this looks good. So let me highlight it directly from here. So it does not exist yet. So that's the reason why it's not there. But let me go back. Here, this is fine. Let's go to the password field, which is fine as well. And we have the sign in button. This can be identified as well. So this looks quite good. I can now click on this button, add objects. So all those objects you can see now in the Object Identification Center will be added to the application models in my IntelliJ environment. So you can see those objects has been added, and if I want, I can rename those now. There's always a code name. So the code name which will appear in my code, the name I will use in my code. So if you want to rename this to a user menu only without the link, you can do it. Same goes for the username edit field. So I can say this is the username. I don't need the edit field at the end. This is the password, and I can also say this is the sign in button. Yeah. So once I've done it, I can save it. So let's save it now directly here. And one more thing of this application models is that you are at any time you can look here for, let's say if I would look for username, it will exactly tell me for all the different objects I have in my application model. It will filter the view and show me exactly those objects which are valid to my searching criteria. Like password, I can see already it has found those. Same goes for sign in button. I can see it directly. You have also the advanced option of searching things if you are using any kind of tags which we have used before, or you can also filter directly by the different types. So it's very powerful. And now when you would compare it directly to the page object models, which is sometimes big pain in order to define those different classes and properties. Here you have a comfort of a wizard which helps you to define the test objects of your application under test. Okay, so now we have defined our application model. The next thing would be to use it in our test case. So let's close it here. And we will create a new test case because the one we had already is based on the script generation. So here I don't need to create a separate file. I could potentially create here directly in this file a new test case, but in order to really separate the lessons, I will create here a new JUnit test case, which will be test using, let's say test using application models, so AM. You have the same structure like we had before in the other template. You have the before class, after class, before and after, and you can also make use of the test where you do the definition of your test activities. So first thing first, again, we need to define the browser object itself and make sure this is provided with the browser factory, and we identify the rest using the browser type. And in the browser type, we would like to launch. So here, one thing I missed, it was launched, and here I would say browser type. Let's go with Chrome for now. This is fine. And here I will just import the browser object. So it is part of my imports here. All the different browser objects are now there. And the next thing what I will do is I will navigate the browser to my application under test, which again is this one. So I use this URL, and now I will not use the object identification center to generate the script like what I've done in the other file. You can see here I have more or less a lot of code written because of the identification, which is part of the whole test itself. What I will do here is I will now refer to my application model which I created. So first thing is the class is EOS model, so exactly the name of the file. Now I will define the name of the variable where I want to assign all those test objects which are part of this file. So let's say it's my testing app. And here I will create a new EOS model which will then take the input of the browser. So everything which is in the browser will be identified using the definition in the EOS models. And now I'm easy to go. I can go with the testing app, do a dot, and I have immediately all access to all the different methods it provides, as well as all the objects which are part of it. So you can see in the first object I have is a page object. So I will open it in parallel so we can see it easily. So the first thing is the page object. You can see the code name is Advantage Shopping Page. If I click here on the dot, Advantage Shopping Page, and on that page I will find additional objects, in total 4, which are user menu, username, password, and sign in. And if I go here and say user menu, then I am accessing the user menu itself. And now on that user menu I could do a click method, and I'm basically clicking on the user menu. And maybe I need to wait here quickly, or let's do it with sync easily. So I will now say after this I will do a quick sync on the browser itself, on the browser page itself, and continue with entering the username and password. This is the username. Let's go to the page itself. Now enter the username. Yeah, here you go, the username. Click. Now here I don't do a click, I will set the value, and the value will be, let's say it will be Amir.Khan, and the next step would be to use the testing app, advantage online shopping, password, and now set the value for a specific password. I will not secure it here. Let's say I say this test, and the last action is to click on the sign in button, which is also part of my application model. So let's say sign in.click, and we are good to go. So once this is done, I will close my browser and end the test. So I am ready. Let's run this test and see how it behaves. So test is started and already finished. So it was that fast. It has already finished the test. Let's go and see if everything was fine. So here the test execution at least is passed. We can now go into the last result file, and I will see that it has executed quite fast. I was not able to even view what is going on. It has executed the test and then closed the browser. So this is how simple you can build your application models without the need of building different classes. We provide the application models wizard, which allows you to really go into the details, scan your application if your application is available, or make use of the custom objects by building your application by definition of your custom objects and building test cases prior application availability. And later on, if you compare those two tests, you can see the clear difference in maintenance. You don't have the overhead of the identification properties anymore in any script. Those are defined completely in your application model, and those application models will be used in your script and test itself. So straightforward and easy to use approach in order to run scaled automation.